Simon, can you give me just a brief sort of overview of Guy, what he's like as a fella and where he's at when we meet him in the movie, please?
Well, first I think you've got to look at what the movie is and what Dan set out to do with the movie. Obviously, it's a romantic comedy, but Dan's tried to. He's made a subversive romantic comedy, or I guess you could say kind of the anti-romantic comedy, although it is romantic. The character of Guy starts off in a lot of ways the way you're familiar with the American character introduced into the British romantic comedy, where he's perceived to be the crass, loud, uncultured American, but he's actually the reverse of that, and he's sort of one of the more sophisticated characters in the piece. But yeah, by and large, the character's a device, and it's the straight man.
Is it fair you almost, well, yourself and Rose's character, almost like the straight couple compared to the comedy couple? Is that kind of how it's supposed to play? Yeah,
definitely. Look, there's a few things working. Dan's kind of a bit of a slut for a joke. He likes gags, and there was a lot of gags, a lot of jokes in the script, and subsequently there's a lot of laughs in the movie. But the idea is that there's a few things at play, and that's that American humour is a little bit different to English humour, although they're coming closer than they have before. And a lot of what is the humour of the Josh character, it doesn't sit necessarily well with Rose's character, and Rose is sort of more subdued, in a sense, more like the Guy Harrop character. But there's a bunch of contradictions in that character. That's what I like about it. It's just slightly, as a concept, the film is a story that we're familiar with. Who hasn't sat at a wedding and thought, this one's not going to last? And he's taken that and then heightened it with putting sort of slightly absurd characters in the piece. And Guy's no different, really. I mean, he's the heir to a solvent's fortune. It's sort of kind of repulsive to start off with, but he's a sort of dashing guy, so there's a contradiction. And I always thought it was very sort of Preston Sturgis-esque. I think, which I like that. It's like very absurd characters with a basic kind of story.
I was going to ask, actually, did you revisit any films of Preston Sturges or George Cukor to get that?
Did I?
Yeah, to get that kind of...
No, I mean, I think, what was great is it was all there. Like, it was all there on the page. I mean, that was one of the things that attracted me to it straight away as soon as I read it. It was one of the funniest scripts I'd read. And Dan really only has half the jokes that were in the script in the movie, because there was just way too many. So that was fun, and I haven't done a full-blown comedy before, and I haven't worked in that environment, and I'd always heard people talking about how different and how interesting it is when you work on a comedy, that the sort of the science of it, and so that was a pleasure to be surrounded by people that really know what they're doing with that stuff.
Is it a little bit intimidating to begin with before you actually start, knowing that maybe the people around you have more, well, some of them have more experience in the genre?
Absolutely. It's very intimidating, but it's kind of why you put yourself in that situation. I'm not unfunny. I can be funny, but these guys are able to be funny on cue. It's different time and time again, and then they're able to reinvent it subtly in a way where it's always funny. I mean, Stephen Merchant he's just got funny bones. I mean, the guy walks in the door and you're expecting the first thing that comes out of his mouth, no matter what it is, you're primed to laugh at. And Rafe has just great chops. I mean, he's hardworking and fearless, and you know, he had a pretty difficult role. He had to be the guy that was likable, but at the same time sort of unlikable all at once.
With you. You mentioned Stephen Merchant. Have you ever been to a wedding where the best man's performance has been quite so abject?
Yeah, but none so abject and charmingly abject, which is where the skill lies with Stephen, and watching that. And it's interesting watching the audience's reaction to his character. When I saw a screening in Los Angeles, and someone asked me afterwards, it's interesting that the character's so absurd, but yet they still invite him to the most important functions in their lives.
Yeah, that's very true. Yeah. I wonder, Sam, if you can recall perhaps the experience of the bird scene, the doves, particularly because I found out that Rose is petrified of birds, which
it
must have made it interesting.
Yeah, working with birds to start with is complicated enough. Then when the lead actress has to hide underneath the table every time they call action, it's even more complicated. We always knew leading up to it that was going to be a difficult, many moving parts in the scene, and it's sort of an important scene in that a lot is revealed. It's kind of a turning point in the movie, but at the same time it's completely absurd. So yeah, it was hard because she was petrified. Honestly, you could see the fear in her eyes, and we had to do take after take after take because she was constantly sliding underneath the table hiding.
I was going to say, any sort of favourite moments from shooting? I presume that might have been one. Or maybe you're not that cruel.
I'm not that cruel. I am a little bit cruel. It was interesting watching Dan's face when we were shooting that.
The terror, the horror, the delight.
We're just wondering if we were going to get through it and if the scene would work and how we could make Rose feel comfortable, at the same time keep Rose in the seat and keep Rose on camera for most of the scene. For me, it was all a great experience. It was great being in London during that time. It was nice. I spent so much time working with, American crews, working with an English crew. That was all a really nice experience for me, being Australian, because we have more in common. There's more similarities between our cultures, and it just feels a bit comforting being here. On the set, just nice watching. Everyone's different. It's always interesting for me working with other actors and seeing the way they approach the work, and watching. Obviously, every director has a slightly different approach too, and Dan's approach to it, given that he wrote the piece as well, and the way he viewed it, and he was always sort of open to new ideas when we were on the set, and encouraging.
Any of your ideas creep in there that are tangible?
I don't keep a tally necessarily, and I hope to think that I'm put myself in the hands of the director like Putty.
Can I touch on your highly successful TV series, Simon?
Sure.
Has The Mentalist had any sort of impact on your film career? Do you think the fact that it's been popular and seen, have more offers come in, perhaps seem to do similar things for film?
Yeah, it's an interesting animal, that, because the show's been successful all over the world, and obviously I'm more known for that than anything else that I've done at this point, and it has been very positive and helped me. The awareness of who I am and the popularity of the show obviously helps me in the other side of the business, in the film business. I mean, I've always done films, and I'll always continue to do films. The challenge is, for me, playing characters that are different to the character that I play in The Mentalist. I look at that like it's kind of my job security. It's my day job. I moonlight in films. I like to challenge myself. I only get a small break, a couple of months a year, to go off and take a holiday and do a film. So it's always a challenge to try and find something that is creatively a bit different and affords me a bit of time to have a rest. So, and I vary it. I mean, last year I did a film called Margin Call, which was a completely different character and a different style of piece compared to what The Mentalist is. And then this is a, you know, full tilt British romantic comedy. It's sort of different again. It's nice. I'm very grateful for it. At the same time, I don't necessarily want to be playing The Mentalist forever.
Are there any other film roles that you've got coming up you could talk about?
I don't have anything concrete at this point, but again, because of the success of the show, it's given me a little bit more flexibility as to, you know, wanting to develop stuff to work on as an actor and also as a producer and a director.
Just as one final thing, casting your mind back to your youth, Simon, do you recall like an epiphany that turned you onto this career path? Was there something that happened?
I don't know if I mean, there's probably a series of little epiphanies, and I think a lot of them were based on just a little bit like, well, what else am I going to do? A little bit of that, and a little bit of, sometimes you meet someone that's an actor or something, you think, well, I think if this guy can do it, I can do it. A little bit of that. I think really, for me, most of the time, it was always about getting out of the way of myself. You know, but you know, you asked me, cast my mind back, and if I really thought about it, I never would have imagined that I'd be in the position that I'm in at all. You know, I'm sort of blessed and pretty lucky guy. I'm ambitious, but I'm not sort of, you know, I don't bare my teeth with my ambition.
So if you weren't, would you have dreamt perhaps of arriving at this stage? You didn't expect it, but did you perhaps dream of it?
Yeah, maybe. Not really. I never really knew what sort of being at this stage really looked like, or what it would be. I'm still not really sure. You know, as long as you're happy doing what you do, isn't it?
Absolutely.